Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first in our webinar series for cybersecurity. Today we have with us Brian Pitchman, and he will be talking to us about security and performance and Cloudflare and how you can use this to enhance security and reliability for your library systems. I am very excited to see Brian talk a little bit more about safe digital experiences for our library users. It has become a topic that has really gained some movement in the library world with everything that we've been seeing with AI, bot scraping, and just being able to keep our patrons safe and their data. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over to Brian to talk a little bit more about enhancing security and performance, how leveraging Cloudflare for your library systems can help your patrons. Brian?
Thanks. Thanks, Jesse. Let me go ahead and share my slides. And if you have questions, feel free to interrupt. I think you all have access to the chat. So if you have a question, I'll watch the chat. So feel free to interrupt me as we go. It'll make this a little bit more exciting for me and not just me rattling off a bunch of facts. So today we're going to talk about how we can use Cloudflare to provide better security and better performance to our websites. Uh, Lately in the news, I think a lot of people have been talking about cybersecurity just in general, from like ransomware to data extortion and things like that. And as we add more things to the World Wide Web and as AI continues to grow, there's more opportunities for these threats to occur. So why are we here? Why are we talking about this? Um, they call it, like, I heard this phrase once called the silent crisis, where you don't really know what's going on because it's not always in your face. And the silent crisis is this concept of automated bot traffic and malicious crawlers with the intent of, and sometimes these crawlers aren't necessarily designed to be malicious, they just act in a malicious way because there's no safeguards around them. And so when certain bots crawl web pages, if there's no rules in place, it'll just crawl and do as much crawling as quickly as possible without any concern for if the server can handle it. So by definition, it's malicious, but the intent of that bot isn't malicious, if that makes sense. Um, and overall, these really aren't annoyances. People are seeing this across their ILSs, discovery layers, to even like their individual library websites. Sometimes they have extranets or intranets that are also being bogged down by these types of traffic. Um, and this session is about what we're doing, why, and how we're using Cloudflare to help us, win. And it's really kind of interesting for me because these attacks typically, or these patterns used to occur more at night, when and most people are developing LLMs and things of that nature know that traffic is lower in the evenings, and so it's better to crawl at night. But at the same time, we have people that are using services 24/7 these days, and so there's always some level of impact. So I'm gonna do this in a weird phase. I'm gonna show you how you can get started in Cloudflare and then talk about what bot protections are, what Cloudflare does, and then finish the setup in Cloudflare because it takes a little bit for DNS to propagate. So let me stop my share. And so for those that don't know, Cloudflare is a service that allows you to protect your environment on a network layer versus on your server origin. So it's really easy to get started with Cloudflare. All you do is you create an account. You can create a free account. And granted, the free account does pretty well for like a basic library web page. But if you have more advanced things, you probably need to look at the Pro or even the business plan. The Pro plan, I believe, is like $20 a month, and the business plan, I think, is 200. Um, and so you would type in your library site, whatever it may be, and you just do a quick scan for DNS records. You continue. So what Cloudflare is doing is this is where you choose your what are willing to pay. And again, free does really good, but if you're seeing more attacks and more bot style issues, you might want to start looking at pro. Um, then you hit next, and so what it's going to do is going to scan your DNS record. So it's going to try to pull in your DNS for your web page into Cloudflare. And doing live demos sometimes doesn't always work. Let's see, it's taking so long. All right, cool. There it goes. And so what it's doing is it's copying all these records over, and you'll see this thing called proxied. That just means that Cloudflare is going to do its protection stuff against it. You're going to activate, and all you have to do is going to give you these name server records, and you just have to pop on over to your domain registrar and update the DNS. And so what will that look like? I'll just show you really quick. There you go. So depending on your DNS registrar, you probably have an option for domain name servers somewhere. You'll hit use custom and you just pop in those other domains into it. Save. And that's all you have to do to actually get started with Cloudflare. And so what Cloudflare is going to do behind the scenes is going to wait to see if you've updated your records. You'll hit continue and you'll hit check. So I'm going to continue with the presentation. So hopefully by the time I finish rambling at you, DNS will propagate and we can play with it live. So, so why are we talking about like network layer protection? And the first thing to understand is what a DDoS or DDoS attack is, and all that stands for is distributed denial of service. Um, a distributed denial of service attack is when a bunch of bots or resources attempt to get into a server or attempt to attack a server or connect to it. And these have incrementally increased year over year, quarter over quarter. And they say in 2025 it's exponentially even higher as more and more of these attacks are really simple to generate. And the amount of tools that are out there to do these types of attacks, there's open source tools even that can allow you to do denial of service attacks, but there's a good reason for it. Um, I instruct people when we talk about cybersecurity is use those open source tools to penetrate, do pen testing and stress test your environment. And so these tools are really, really important to leverage. So if you know what the cyber kitties in the world are doing, you'll be better served at protecting your own environment. Um, and this is also sometimes these DDoS attacks are completely accidental. It's a cat laying on a keyboard, or somebody left a book on a keyboard. I used to work for a managed service provider that supports learning management systems, and it took our entire infrastructure down one day because someone's dog was sitting on the keyboard, and it was just however it was positioned. I guess it was refreshing the page in such a fast way that it brought the entire network down. And so sometimes these are the sources of those attacks. But in general, they say bots are winning this like global battle. Um, Depending on the survey you're looking at, over 50% of web traffic today is now non-human, which is really startling. Um, there's a network protection company called F5 that you can put into, it's like a hardware appliance that you can put into an environment. And they say of that, 10%, even with this appliance in place, they say about 10% of this traffic is still bots. Like it's really challenging to block 100% of bots. In the cybersecurity world, there's a phrase of mitigating risks. We never say a risk is completely removed. And so even at best mitigation strategies, you're still looking at about 10% of your traffic still being bot traffic. Um, and library scraper or library systems aren't immune to this. Um, there's scrapers, credential stuffers, and proxy routed bots are continually on the rise. Another really interesting graph, and they say in 2024, this is when like the pivoting point. It's when 51% of all web traffic was now not human. Um, and there's still good bots and bad bots out there. Like good bots would be like your Google search engine optimization bot or your Bing bots that aren't designed for crawling for LLMs, but are for search engine usage. But they say this shift happened in around 2024 because of everyone's trying to compete to build the best large language model. And so you have like Claude or Anthropic, Meta from Facebook or Llama and Meta, Google's Gemini, um, OpenAI, and et cetera. Like everyone and their mother seems to now have an LLM, and all these LLMs are scraping the web to build its knowledge base. This is another really interesting graph that talks about web traffic and how it even is impacting mobile apps. Um, and these little boxes are like the simplicity of a bot. So you can make a really simple bot. Anyone can do it, where you can just get information and retrieve it. Intermediate might inject other code to get like a search query. And advanced is like downloading content, downloading images, and those types of scrapers. And that's the makeup of these different types of bots. And so one of my favorite conversations to have with people is, I'm a library. We have nothing that the world needs, or there's no data that we have that's important. Well, the thing is, most people know that libraries house a lot of open information. Some libraries have e-content that's freely available without a sign-in, or online databases that are accessible through an easy proxy link. And so there's tons of like amazing data that a library owns, and people know this. Um, And so there's bots that scrape cover images. So if your website has a bunch of images or photos, it'll scrape that. Or there's automated catalog queries can end up flooding a server. And overall, like these types of attacks aren't really random. Um, they're attackers see open systems as easy targets, and open systems as in like publicly available repositories of data. Um, in general, like the hospitality industry saw 45% of its web traffic from unauthorized bots. So bots were able to access what was allegedly privatized information, like behind like a paywall or something, and was able to scrape and still comb through it. There's a thing called credential stuffing, and that's the idea of taking like a CSV file of usernames and passwords and attempting to log into unprotected sectors and say, hey, I know Brian uses this password because this system was hacked before. Let's see if his password works over here. But in general, the sophistication of these bots is continuing to rise, making it very hard to play like whack-a-mole if you're operating on your server level. Somebody has a good question. Wouldn't this be something a university would want to have on all of its network, not just library websites? So Cloudflare as a tool is designed for public-facing internet accessible pages. Um, the tool F5 can do doesn't have to be publicly facing. It can block like bot traffic from in the environment and outside the environment. For our purpose or our use case for using Cloudflare is anything that's accessible through the internet is something that we want to put a firewall, if you will, in front of it. But it's a great question. Not many universities are using tools like Cloudflare, like the smaller ones, or even small libraries may not even have firewalls in place. And so this is like a really simple and really great turnkey solution that doesn't really break the budget. So what is a bot? And I know that the term bot seems very generic, and it kind of is. Uh, a bot could be something that just calls to a web page. So, hey, is this resource here? Yes, it is. Thanks for this information. Mentioned this earlier about like basic, intermediate, and advanced. Intermediate is like emulators on a computer that can like replicate a iPhone screen 1,000 times to do stress testing. Like there's really good tools out there to stress test a website or to like gather information in a safe and important way. But that would be considered an intermediate bot. And advanced would be something more like simulating mouse clicks, simulating bypass. If you want to play with a really cool advanced bot, it's called Automate AI. And what it'll do is it'll scrub websites and pull content for you. Um, and there's like a free tier and it works really, really great. Sorry, Browse AI. But in general, bots have like malicious bots have the goal of credential stuffing. Non-malicious bots might just be scraping data. Other bots that are doing like reselling your content. So like adding a cart or placing things on hold. Reseller bots know what that framework looks like, so it's going to replicate it on your webpage. And even ratings and reviews these days, there's a lot more AI generated manipulation of that content. So how does these bots actually impact library performance, and why does this work? Um, for instance, so if you are hosting cover images, or if you're hosting like a collection of photos that you've collected for your community, every time those images load on a page, it requires decent heavy server load because it has to download that image for that individual or for that bot for that matter. And so when there's a bot burst, usually you'll see the memory get overloaded, a service crashes because the server has only so much RAM to do what it's supposed to, and it'll prioritize that RAM for running the system, running the services. It doesn't have an infinite number. Like there's no tool out there that exists that allows a server to have unlimited connections. There is a threshold. Um, what people will do in some environments is they would do like load balancing. So they have the same server replicated as many times as they need, which is what Amazon would do. Because there's so many users connecting, they have to spin up servers as more people connect. But for most libraries, that is not a feasible solution. To handle a bot attack, to have 15 servers just chilling on standby, which you pay for, isn't a viable solution. And so F5, there's a really good report that I have a link for. It was on the bottom of one of the early slides. They found that for about 5% of web traffic is still bot traffic that's supposed to be blocked that's still getting through. And some of the more malicious pieces is like 10.6% of that traffic is credential stuffing, or hospitality services like hospitals or even libraries, seeing 18.3% in bot attacks. What we're seeing today also is bots are using proxies to mask its IP in order to do what it needs. We at Bywater have even seen uh, bots using Cloudflare as a proxy to send out bots, because obviously you don't want to block Cloudflare because a big chunk of the world uses it. And so there's some very clever uses and disguises of how people are managing their bots and sending them out. If you're looking at countries, even historically, I think people used to assume that like a lot of malicious web traffic came out of China. That has pivoted, and they say Brazil is now like the number one source of botnet attacks because of their cost of using it there is a lot less. But back to the proxies thing, if you ever were curious if your IP address, public IP address, is part of some sort of botnet, and if someone's using it as such, or you have an internal issue that's sending out bots, it's called IP Quality Score, or IPQS. If you go to their webpage, you can throw in your IP. There's a free account that gets you like 2,000 searches, which is more than enough. It's always good to like fact check and make sure you're not part of this, growing bot problem. The other thing is that bots know your calendar. Um, you'll see attack rates typically spike during like your summer reading program or the school year starts, or even on holidays, because that's usually when a lot of malicious traffic starts around the holidays because people aren't paying as close attention to the little pop-ups or the emails like, oh, here's your holiday gift card. And so you'll see increases in these types of attacks around those. And your website's the bird in this image. It took me a minute to understand the meme. So what do we do here at Bywater? So what we did was we launched a enterprise version of Cloudflare for all of our Aspen servers and our Koha servers. But to do that in a successful way, we had to write a whole bunch of what's called a WAF rule, or a policy that allows certain traffic to go through, so it doesn't get flagged for bot traffic or like a SQL injection or something like that. And so what we looked at was the standard amount of traffic. We monitored for about a week or two to see what this normal amount of traffic looked like. And so we were able to write the rules in place so those don't get blocked when we turned on the proxying layer. And so things like book cover loading or searches or logins were some of the most hit bot passes or methods because a bot would love to use a card catalog to search for content. Um, Cloudflare, if you're looking at using Cloudflare for your own environment, Cloudflare doesn't like non-web traffic. And so things like SIP or Z3950 or NSIP is web-based. But those things, those types of like non-web traffic content, Cloudflare will just block automatically. And so you'll have to write a rule or build this another server to route that traffic for it, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. APIs are web traffic, so you don't have to worry about it blocking API calls. It might block an API if it acts like a bot, and so you'll have to like write a rule, a WAF rule, to say this type of traffic pattern isn't a bot, it's an API call, allow it through. So why do we choose Cloudflare? Um, we need something that can do real-time blocking was our biggest concern. Um, so historically, when people are looking at like bot attacks or malicious traffic or annoying traffic, you would block by IP on the server level, or you would block it by user agent. Um, on the server level, but a server can only handle so much. And so if it's battling a bunch of bots, it has to use some of that resources to continue to block those IPs and also serve real traffic. And again, like we talked about limits, it can't do everything all at once all the time. And so Cloudflare allows you to have it on what's called your edge network or the network layer. So before your server gets touched, it has to go through a network of some kind. And Cloudflare is that network to like stop that traffic before it ends up getting to where it wants to go. And there's tons of really great rules. They give us a lot of flexibility. And one of the things that we wanted to do for our customers and our partners was if you had a custom URL, Cloudflare's rule is you have to, have that service paid for on your own. And we're like, no, that won't work for our partners. Like we will protect traffic across domains that we don't own. And so we were able to come up with a really good solution with Cloudflare to allow us to monitor that traffic and block that traffic on our domains, which was a huge piece of flexibility. So here's some like really simple graphs. On the left is CPU usage, on the right is network usage. And you can probably guess around what time we turned on Cloudflare protections. You see a slow drop with CPU usage as it gets adjusted and fine-tuned to like the bot rules. And then network usage improvement like noticed right away because we're not having to serve all this like negative traffic. And so here is a little screenshot of what we've blocked already. Um, and this is just like a snippet of one of our servers and how much, and you'll see like mitigated by WAF, which means blocked by the firewall. Served by Cloudflare means Cloudflare was able to cache some of the content and show it a little bit faster. And then served by origin is the server actually having to do the work. And so what this is really great for is we're able to isolate a lot of these threats before they even get to the server. Um, and then a lot of our smaller libraries can benefit it because we were able to use like best in class, like bigger defenses. Um, and it's a lot faster than trying to find an IP and block it on a server level. This will do it on the network level for all the domains that we own. Um, so again, kind of like a quick little recap, what are the bots actually trying to do? Um, Credential stuffing is that like login abuse, scraping catalog information or summaries of books, anything with data that's usable. Um, some we didn't see this, but I see people having this issue is where a bot will create fake accounts in order to gain access into a system. So imagine a bot creating a bunch of like library cards um, in order to hopefully get more access into a system or fake signups for an event or something to that effect. Bots attempt to bypass like IP rate-based limiting by switching its IP, or other times trying to look at as legitimate traffic by running behind a proxy of some kind. So again, I briefly alluded to this. Former strategies for blocking bad traffic or denial of service attacks are kind of outdated at this point. Because again, it's really hard. You have to do a lot of homework to make sure you're blocking the right IP. And then again, you're putting the server on more load to manage these blocks. And so in general, bots can overwhelm the system because however, whatever tools you're using to block it can't do all of it all at once. Um, and so putting things on the network layer with like Cloudflare is the best solution. Um, I also want to briefly talk about like what is a CDN? A CDN is a content delivery network. And so what part of Cloudflare's offering, which is probably why they're the best in class, is they have a bunch of servers all over or data centers all over the world. And so they say when you access a web page, um, there's a bit of latency as you get to that web server. So you have to go out to the network, you hit a router, that router then sends you to another router to where that server is, and then away you go. Since Cloudflare is so well connected to the ecosystem of the internet, um, you don't have as far of a hop to go. You don't have as many hops to get to that endpoint. And so what a content delivery network allows you to do is it will reduce your server load, increase speed of the website, and it protects your origin server from these bot attacks because these other data centers spread out over the world that are closest to where that attack's happening um, deals with it there before it gets to your end network or your end nodes. And so a CDN can shield everything from your catalog to digital services to web pages that you're hosting very easily. And then again, it doesn't take too much effort to do it. So they say I think Cloudflare has over 300 data centers um, all over the world, and how that kind of works is wherever your like IP geographically located. So if your IP says you're in Atlanta, you will connect to an Atlanta data center that Cloudflare owns and serves part of that web content for you, and then the rest of it then goes to the end origin. Oh, I saw there was QA. Sorry, I was only looking at chats. One of the questions was, can Cloudflare block accessibility checking bots? It can. And so you would write a rule saying, don't block this type of bot. And so you would have to either write a rule or just not block like unverified bots. The next question is, if our library is currently self-hosted but plans to migrate to be hosted by Bywater, would firing up Cloudflare affect our migration? It wouldn't. Um, I would suggest so if your self-hosted environment is using SIP though, we won't be able to protect your traffic because we would need to set up a you would need to set up a second SIP server in your environment, do a bunch of rewriting rules. We have it set up for our hosted partners. So it might just be best to do that. The other thing I would suggest doing is putting on a login page for the OPAC. So you could disable the public OPAC, make a login page, and then just create like a guest credential so people don't have to remember their username and password. And then throw in what those credentials are, so people can still utilize the card catalog. That's one way to mitigate it. And then the other question was, can you speak a bit about Biowater's rollout of Cloudflare and where things stand? Um, Yeah, so we are still rolling out. We're doing it in batches. We have like 600 some odd uh, partners that we have to work through, and so we're doing it in small stages to make sure everything's working the way it should, and we have enough team members on standby to like quickly adjust if something's being blocked when it shouldn't. Cloudflare does a really great job of logging how a block is happening by giving what's called array ID. And so with Array ID, we can search all the logs on Cloudflare to see where things are going on. And it's like in seconds. And so I'll hopefully be able to show you that live, what that looks like. So let's go back to setting up Cloudflare. Let's see if this has propagated. All right, review. Sweet. Give me a second to rearrange my windows. So when your site is protected by Cloudflare, and this happened, and like the propagation on Cloudflare is phenomenal. Um, One of the other great things, because Cloudflare has so many data centers, is if you're doing DNS changes, they say typically when you make a DNS change, it takes 24 to 48 hours, which is true for some data providers. Cloudflare, I don't think I have ever had to wait more than 10 minutes, because they have so many data centers in the world and so many DNS propagation services that when you make an update, it's actually updated. So as you can see, I have one website, elaborysite.com. Oops. And there's our webpage. You know if it's being proxied by Cloudflare, typically by looking at the SSL certificate. It won't be like your free Let's Encrypt. It'll be probably like we Google or something to that effect. Um, but this is where all the magic is. So if we go to security, I can see the web traffic in the last 24 hours, and if something was mitigated or served by Cloudflare. And now this is the free version, and you still get quite a lot with the free version. So where did that go? So we can create custom rules to block specific traffic. So all this, block bots. So there's a few ways to do this. If your website's only visible or accessible, or you want it to only be people that are in the United States, you can block by country or continent. So you can say if it equals, North America, allow traffic through. Or you can say if it does not, technically we don't do, if it does not equal North America, you can say block and hit deploy. So let's show you what people not in North America will see by saying equals. So right now it's set. So if you go to this web page, you should see it get blocked. Maybe not. Oh, because I'm probably on a VPN. Give it a few minutes. Refresh. There we go. So now this is what happens when you are actually blocked. And here's this magic that I think Cloudflare did really well. They have this Ray ID. So if you're supporting your own version of Cloudflare and this is how you instruct your users, say, oh, if you get blocked, can you give me your Cloudflare Ray ID? They'll give you this string. And what we could do is we can look at the analytics and we can find out why they got blocked. So I can add filter. Oops. Right. Sorry, I'm used to the paid version now, so I have to relearn where everything's at. I don't think it's showing up yet. It might take a second. Oh, there we go. So it's showing which IPs are accessing it, how they're getting there, and if they're being cached or not. And so I can see all these requests down here and whether or not they were allowed in, uh, and if there was a specific rule taking place to prevent that type of traffic. Second. Okay, here we are. So Ray ID equals this, hit apply, and I can now see, all right, why did this person get blocked? They were blocked because I blocked them by country. Going back to this WAF rule, let's say we identified on our server a set of bots that was attacking us. And let's say this bot name was equals Ryan Test. Actually, I lied. I'm gonna do one more thing for us to show you the different options for blocking. Uh, now Cloudflare has a few ways to validate if a person's real or not. So if you are blocking by country, let's say, but you want to let real users still access your web page, this setting is probably the best. So if you do content does not equal North America and do manage challenge, what will happen is this little screen pops up for a brief second, and it can validate if you're a real user or not by looking at the browser, its IP, and how that traffic is being managed. And it'll let them through without having to do any of the silly like capture responses. If you wanted to pester your patrons more, you could set it to interactive challenge, which I'll have to check the box. And that's the difference between a managed challenge or an interactive challenge. It requires a human to click a box in order to proceed. So those are the different ways you can like mitigate traffic. But I highly encourage you to do something to that effect as soon as you set up Cloudflare. Just block all the other countries, or not block the other countries, but create them to do an interactive challenge or even just the managed challenge in order to help make sure you're expecting your stuff correctly. Hey, Jay-Z.
Hey, we have two more questions, Brian.
Oh, yeah.
One is a self-hosted Koha server. If they choose Cloudflare, do they need to make any changes server side to the Koha server if they're self-hosted?
If you're self-hosted and you enable Cloudflare, it will block SIP connections. So if you're using SIP, it won't work. Like it won't work like you would like it to. Um, and so that would be the thing you would have to do. You'd have to spin up a new SIP server that wouldn't be proxied by Cloudflare, and you should be good to go. Um, and then do you have to move your DNS to Cloudflare when implementing Cloudflare? There's a way. I, I, this one is a little tricky. So you could, in theory, use Cloudflare, and they have like a tool called CNAME flattening. And I don't know too much about this one. This might be like a question to ask a Cloudflare expert, where you could take your CNAMEs or take your like subdomains dot whatever, put that in Cloudflare and protect that traffic. That's essentially what we're doing for people that have custom host names. We're not asking you to move your DNS to Cloudflare. We're just taking a CNAME and proxying that data. But otherwise, it's probably best bet to move everything to Cloudflare. And there's a couple other like really great things that Cloudflare does. One is email. Um, you can monitor your email traffic and seeing what's being delivered, what are your sending sources. This tool called DMARC management. Most of the time, you have to pay for something like this. There's tool companies out there like ValueMail, DMARC Report are two of the bigger ones, and you pay 30, 50, $60 a month for it to monitor where your emails are being sent so you can make sure that no one's spoofing you. They give it to you for free, even on the free version. So the last thing I want to show you is kind of how like a bot traffic works. I think I got a couple more minutes. So going to our bots, I mentioned you can block by user agent. You can also say you can block by known bots or verified bots based on the category. So if you're like, somebody mentioned about accessibility bots. So let's say you were blocking all bots, but didn't want to block accessibility bots. So you just choose this, you choose your action, and it would be skip. And you choose what things you want it to skip, which would probably be everything, and hit save. So in seconds, you've allowed anything that's an accessible or verified bot that worries about accessibility allowed through your network. And again, like you don't have to be like a wizard at computers to use this. Like this is probably one of the most turnkey solutions you can grab. Um, if you're not doing anything super complex. Uh, Otherwise, you can block by user agent. So do this really quick. So block. So if you wanted to simulate what a user agent looks like, I'll show you like some, I don't know, ethical hacking 101. Uh, in Terminal, share my screen. So if you wanted to test a website to see how it is working with different user agents or bots, uh, it's curl-a, you type in the bot name, and then a web page -i, and you hit enter. So what this will do is it will tell you, it'll pull up the content and tell you how it's, oopsies, how do I do that? It'll pull up the content and let you know how, if that web page is accessible or if it's being blocked. So right now it says it's being blocked. And if I didn't want it to be blocked, I can write a rule to say, don't block it. The way I know it's not being blocked is it says HTTP 403, which is forbidden, meaning you're not allowed to access it. But let's say I wanted it to access for some reason. Save. The reason why it was blocked is I still had the country code on there. So let me turn that off first. Sure. All right. So 200 means the web page can access it. So this user agent Brian test can access that web page. So let's say you're looking at the logs and you're like, oh my God, Brian Test is hitting our website every, half a millisecond, and he's doing it thousands of times. We don't want Brian to look at our server anymore. All you'd have to do is hop over to Cloudflare and you type in that user agent, Brian Test equals, you want to block it, hit save. Now, to simulate a bot attack again, is I'll go try to hit it, and now I get a 403, meaning that bot is no longer allowed to access the website. The quick and dirty little way to spoof a bot or do what this is what bots are doing. Not all bots pass a user agent. Some pass an IP address, or are only passing an IP address. So you'd have to comb for those IPs and block. Cloudflare does a really good job with its filtering services, so you can see which IPs are accessing your website and from where. So if you look at your events, you can see what type of action was taken, if something was blocked or not, and then you can filter by these different actions. And you can do the last 30 minutes, the last 6 hours, and see a really good snapshot. If you pay for your plan, like the pro plan, you'll get a bunch more opportunities to see graphs and charts where you can really dive in more and see where that traffic is coming from and if it really is malicious or not, or annoying, I should say. Are there any other questions?
Oh, there we go, 2 more.
So what about DDoS or DDoS where the IP is constantly switching? So Cloudflare does a good job at learning that pattern. So if the IP is constantly switching, chances are there's a user agent that they have. And you can filter off by that user agent, very similar to how I did Brian Test. And then you can block that. What you can also do is there's an option on Cloudflare called I'm under attack. And if you turn that on, it'll prompt everybody to do the yes, I'm a human, which is a really great way to if you're oh, I'm so stressed out, I don't know what to do or how to fix it. You check a box and then it'll manage that threat for you. The threat actor goes away, and then you turn that I'm under attack mode off, and things are back to normal. Someone mentions that the servers are hosted by water. Is there anything we need to do with our setup? No, there isn't. We'll actually reach out to you and get you moved over. If you're eager and really excited for this, feel free to reach out and create a ticket, and we can bump you up on the list.
Brian, this has been super enlightening. We hear
Thanks.
the terms being used, but don't really get to see the backside of it. So this was neat to see the setup and how things are working and, viewing the activity. Um,
Yeah.
I do want to share our next webinar in the digital defense series will be securing library systems. There's a link for it if you want to register. That will be in May. And if you have any suggestions of what you'd like to see, as always, please let us know. Just email outreach@bywatersolutions.com.
Cool. And if there's questions too about setting up your own Cloudflare for your own website or things like that, you can reach out to me. I'll throw my email in the chat. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Brian, so much.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.